There is a pattern you'll notice in people who quietly disappear from everyone they know. Most people see distance. Few people see the pattern behind the distance. One day they stop texting first. Then they stop making plans. Then they stop checking in. And eventually people start talking. They changed. They became cold. They cut everyone off. But here's the strange part. The person who walked away often tells a completely different story, because from their perspective, they didn't suddenly decide to abandon everyone. They simply stopped carrying relationships that couldn't stand on their own. And once you see that pattern, a different question appears. Not why did they leave, but why were they carrying everything in the first place? Think about the person who always reaches out first. The person who remembers birthdays, the person who checks in when others are struggling, the person who rearranges their schedule to help, the reliable one, the dependable one, the glue. For years, everyone sees their effort. What nobody sees is the cost. Because eventually, the mind starts noticing something, the imbalance. Not all at once, slowly. A forgotten phone call, a promise that never becomes action, a friendship that only seems active when someone needs something, a relationship where support flows in one direction. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, just small pieces of evidence collecting over time, like drops of water filling a bucket, until one day the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. And that's where psychology becomes interesting. Because the human brain is constantly looking for patterns. It has to. Patterns help us predict outcomes. Patterns help us survive. Patterns help us decide where to invest our time, energy, and attention. So when the brain repeatedly sees the same result, it begins making adjustments. Not consciously, automatically. The person doesn't sit down with a spreadsheet and decide to withdraw from everyone. But their nervous system starts doing something similar. It starts asking questions. How much energy does this relationship require? How much support comes back? How often do I show up? How often do they show up? And eventually, the answers become difficult to ignore. This is the pattern of unequal effort. Most people think relationships end because of one major event, a betrayal, an argument, a dramatic falling out. But often, relationships end because of accumulation, years of imbalance, years of carrying more than your share, years of being available for people who are rarely available for you. And here's where another pattern emerges, the pattern of predictable disappointment. When enough relationships follow the same script, the brain begins expecting the ending, not because it's negative, because it's adaptive. Imagine touching a hot stove repeatedly. Eventually, you stop needing to think about it. Your nervous system learns. Human relationships work similarly. If enough experiences end with disappointment, the mind begins preparing for disappointment before it arrives. Not because it wants to suffer, because it wants to protect itself. That's why some people seem distant. That's why some people pull away. That's why some people stop trying. They're not necessarily reacting to the person in front of them. They're reacting to the pattern behind the person. And for some people, that pattern goes much further than adulthood. Sometimes it starts in childhood. A parent who was physically present but emotionally unavailable. A household where feelings were ignored. A childhood where asking for help rarely produced help. A home where independence wasn't a choice, it was a requirement. The nervous system learns powerful lessons during those years. Lessons about trust, lessons about connection, lessons about what happens when you depend on other people. And once those lessons become patterns, they often follow us into adulthood. That's why two people can experience the exact same friendship and interpret it completely differently. One sees a delayed text message, the other sees a warning sign. One sees someone being busy, the other sees someone slowly disappearing. because they're not reacting to the event itself. They're reacting to the pattern they believe the event belongs to. And that's where another important pattern appears, the pattern of hypervigilance. Most people think hypervigilance means paranoia. It doesn't. Sometimes it simply means pattern recognition operating at full capacity. The person notices things others miss, changes in effort, changes in energy, changes in consistency. The friend who only calls when they need something. The person who says they care but never follows through. The relationship where investment always seems to flow one direction. Over time, these signals become easier to detect. The person becomes a pattern reader, and eventually something changes. They stop chasing. Not dramatically, quietly. They stop initiating. They stop compensating. They stop holding relationships together by themselves. And what happens next reveals everything. Because relationships built on mutual effort continue. Relationships built on one-sided effort disappear. That's when many people experience a surprising realization. The loneliest they ever felt wasn't after they walked away. It was before. It was while surrounded by people. It was while constantly showing up for others. It was while carrying relationships that weren't truly carrying them back. And once they stop carrying those relationships, something unexpected happens. The noise gets quieter. The pressure gets lighter. The exhaustion begins to fade. Most people call this isolation, but that's not always what it is. Sometimes it's restoration. Sometimes the person isn't running from connection. They're recovering from depletion. There's a difference. And perhaps that's the real pattern. The people who seem the most distant aren't necessarily rejecting relationships. They're rejecting imbalance. They're rejecting the version of connection that taught them they would always be the one doing the work. That doesn't mean they hate people. It doesn't mean they'll give up on love. It means they're protecting something. Their energy, their peace, their ability to trust, their ability to hope. Because after enough disappointment, self-preservation begins looking like distance from the outside, but from the inside, it feels like survival. And perhaps that's the real pattern. The people who seem the most distant aren't protecting themselves from connection. They're protecting themselves from a pattern of giving more than they receive, a pattern of showing up alone, a pattern of carrying relationships that were never truly shared. Most people see someone who cut everyone off. Few people see someone who finally stopped carrying what was never theirs to carry. And once you see that pattern, something changes. You stop asking, why did they walk away? And start asking, what happened that made staying feel so heavy? Because sometimes the people who leave aren't running from others. They're finally returning to themselves. And once you see the pattern, you can change the outcome.